The Adventures of Charlotte and Lila the Fairy. Chapter 1. Once upon a time, there was a 9-year-old girl named Charlotte who loved nothing more than exploring the woods behind her house. She would often spend hours wandering through the trees, searching for new sights and sounds. One day, while exploring a particularly dense section of the forest, Charlotte stumbled upon a tiny, glowing creature hovering just above the ground. At first, she thought it was a firefly, but as she drew closer, she realized that it was a fairy. The fairy introduced herself as Lila and explained to Charlotte that she was a guardian of the forest. She also told Charlotte that she was a special girl with a pure heart, and that because of this, she had been chosen to embark on a magical adventure. Lila sprinkled some glittering dust on Charlotte, and in an instant, the two of them were transported to a magical land filled with all sorts of fantastical creatures. As Charlotte looked around in amazement, she saw unicorns with shimmering manes and tails, griffins soaring through the sky, and mermaids swimming in a crystal clear lake. The forest was full of towering trees with vines and flowers growing up their trunks, and there were tiny fairy houses scattered throughout. Lila explained that Charlotte had been brought to this magical land to help save it from a wicked sorceress who was trying to destroy everything in her path. The sorceress had already turned many of the creatures in the land to stone, and it was up to Charlotte and Lila to stop her. Charlotte was terrified, but she knew that she had to be brave if she was going to save the magical land. Together, she and Lila set out on a quest to defeat the sorceress and break the spell that had turned the creatures to stone. It wasn't an easy journey, and they faced many obstacles along the way. But with Lila's guidance and Charlotte's bravery, they eventually made it to the sorceress's castle. The two friends snuck in and found the sorceress performing a dark spell. With all her might, Charlotte shouted, "Stop!" And the sorceress turned to face her. Charlotte spoke from her heart, telling the sorceress that she was causing harm to the magical land and all of its creatures. Moved by Charlotte's words, the sorceress agreed to stop her destructive ways and to reverse the spell she had cast. With the spell broken, all the creatures in the land were restored to their former selves, and Charlotte was hailed as a hero. The unicorns even gave her a ride through the forest as a way of saying thank you. As the sun began to set and it was time to return home, Lila took Charlotte by the hand and told her that she would always be a guardian of the forest. Charlotte returned home, her heart filled with gratitude for her magical adventure and her new friend, Lila the Fairy. Chapter 2. One day, Charlotte was playing in her backyard when she heard a familiar voice calling her name. It was Lila, the fairy she met in the woods, who had come to visit her. Charlotte was so happy to see her friend again and excited to hear that she had another adventure waiting for her. Lila told Charlotte that there was a very special tree in the forest that reached up so high into the sky that its top was lost in the clouds. Lila had heard that the tree was home to a magical creature that could help them with a problem they were facing. Without hesitation, Charlotte agreed to go on the adventure with Lila. They made their way to the forest and found the enormous tree that Lila had told her about. The trunk was so wide that it took both of them to wrap their arms around it, and the branches were so thick that they could support their weight. Charlotte and Lila began to climb up the tree, their feet finding solid footholds and their hands grasping the sturdy branches. As they climbed higher, they noticed that the weather began to change. The air became colder, and the clouds that had once been far below them were now at eye level. The tree was so tall that they had to stop to catch their breath several times along the way, but they kept climbing. They didn't know how high the tree went, but they were determined to reach the top. Finally, after what seemed like hours of climbing, they reached the very top of the tree. As they looked around, they saw that they were now above the clouds, and the sun was shining brightly on their faces. They could see the entire forest and the surrounding lands, and it was a breathtaking sight. They searched for the magical creature that Lila had heard about and eventually found it. It was a beautiful bird with feathers that shimmered like gold. The bird spoke to them in a language that only Lila could understand, and it agreed to help them with their problem. With the bird's help, Charlotte and Lila were able to solve their problem, and they began their journey back down the tree. As they climbed down, they noticed that the weather began to change once again. The air became warmer, and the clouds disappeared. When they reached the ground, Charlotte and Lila hugged each other tightly, both grateful for the adventure they had shared. They said their goodbyes, knowing that they would see each other again someday. From that day on, Charlotte knew that the world was full of wonder and magic, and she promised herself that she would never stop exploring it. Chapter 3. Charlotte was spending a lovely day outside, enjoying the sunshine and the gentle breeze. Suddenly, she heard a strange sound coming from the nearby bushes. She approached cautiously and found a tiny, scared animal all alone. It was a baby rabbit, and it looked like it was lost. Charlotte picked up the rabbit and examined it closely. It was so small and cute, with soft, fluffy fur and big, sad eyes. Charlotte knew she had to help the rabbit find its mom. She quickly thought of Lila, her fairy friend who had helped her with her previous adventures. Charlotte whispered Lila's name, and in a flash, the fairy appeared before her. "What's wrong, Charlotte?" Lila asked, looking at the baby rabbit in Charlotte's hands. "This little guy is lost," Charlotte replied. "We need to find his mom." Lila smiled, knowing that Charlotte was always ready for an adventure. "Let's go then," she said, and both of them set out to find the rabbit's mom. They searched high and low, looking behind bushes and under trees, but they couldn't find the rabbit's mom. As they walked through the forest, they heard other animals, and they began to worry that the rabbit's mom was too far away. Charlotte and Lila knew they had to act quickly, so they decided to climb a nearby hill to get a better view of the area. They made their way up the hill, and when they reached the top, they could see far into the distance. Finally, they spotted a group of rabbits in the distance, and they knew that they had found the right ones. They made their way down the hill and approached the rabbits carefully. The baby rabbit in Charlotte's arms began to squirm excitedly, recognizing its mother's scent. The mother rabbit hopped over to them, and with a little help from Charlotte and Lila, the baby rabbit was reunited with its mom. The mother rabbit sniffed her baby, making sure it was safe and sound. She then turned to Charlotte and Lila and gave them a grateful nod before hopping away with her baby in tow. Charlotte and Lila felt a sense of accomplishment as they watched the mother and baby rabbit disappear into the distance. They knew that they had helped an animal in need and that their adventure had made a difference. As they walked back home, Charlotte knew that there would be more adventures in her future. And with Lila by her side, she felt that nothing was impossible. Chapter 4. One day, as Charlotte was walking in the woods, she stumbled upon Lila who was frantically searching for something. "What's wrong, Lila?" asked Charlotte. "The magic stone is missing," Lila replied in a panicked voice. "The magic stone?" asked Charlotte, confused. "Yes, it's the source of all magic in our land," explained Lila. "Without it, everything will turn gray and lifeless." Charlotte could see the worry in Lila's eyes, and she knew that she had to help her friend. "Don't worry, Lila," Charlotte said. "We'll find it together." Lila nodded, and they set out to find the magic stone. As they walked through the forest, they asked every creature they met if they had seen the stone, but no one had any information. They were just about to give up when they heard a faint whisper coming from a nearby cave. Charlotte and Lila approached the cave cautiously and found a mischievous gnome named Glint. Glint was holding the magic stone, and he refused to give it back. "This stone is mine," he said in a gruff voice. "I found it, and I'm not giving it up." Charlotte and Lila knew that they had to act quickly. They couldn't let the land lose its magic. They approached Glint and tried to reason with him. "Glint, this stone is not yours to keep," said Charlotte. "It belongs to the land, and without it, everything will lose its magic." Glint snorted, "I don't care about magic. I just want this stone for myself." Lila stepped forward. "Glint, if you give us the stone, we'll make it worth your while. We'll help you find something that's just as valuable as this stone." Glint looked at Lila skeptically, but he was intrigued by her offer. "Fine," he said. "But it has to be something really valuable." Charlotte and Lila thought for a moment and then came up with an idea. They knew that there was a rare plant that only grew in the deepest parts of the forest. It had special properties that could heal any injury or illness. They offered to help Glint find the plant in exchange for the stone. Glint agreed to the deal, and they set out to find the plant. It was a long and difficult journey, but they finally found the plant, and Glint was delighted. He traded the plant for the magic stone, and Charlotte and Lila breathed a sigh of relief. With the magic stone back in their hands, Charlotte and Lila made their way back to the land. They placed the stone back in its rightful place, and the land was once again full of color and magic. Charlotte and Lila hugged each other, relieved and happy that their adventure had a happy ending. They knew that they could handle anything as long as they had each other. The end. Do you want to hear more stories? Then make sure you subscribe to our channel so you never miss our daily stories. And keep listening for more stories, which will play shortly.